What happens when the most powerful institution in the Christian world is led by someone who believes that service is more important than status? What if a pope decides that titles, influence, and prestige should never stand above compassion? Since his election, Pope Leo XIV has become one of the most closely watched religious leaders in the world. Every gesture, every speech, and every decision has been examined by millions. But among all the discussions surrounding his pontificate, one question continues to stand out. What kind of church does Pope Leo XIV want to build? Today, we explore the vision behind his leadership and why many believe it marks the beginning of a new chapter in Vatican history. When Pope Leo XIV appeared on the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica after his election, people across the world focused on the historic moment. He became the first American-born pope, but the significance of his election extended far beyond nationality. His years as a missionary and his reputation for humility had already shaped expectations. From the very beginning, his message was remarkably consistent. The Church must remain close to ordinary people, especially those who are suffering, forgotten, or living on the margins of society. Throughout history, every pope has inherited enormous responsibilities. Leading more than 1 billion Catholics means balancing spiritual leadership with the realities of a global institution. The Vatican oversees charitable work, diplomacy, education, and countless local churches spread across every continent. Managing such a system requires organization, but Pope Leo XIV has repeatedly reminded people that administration should never replace compassion. Observers quickly notice that his speeches often return to one central idea. The Church exists to serve people, not itself. Buildings, offices, and procedures have value only when they help believers and communities. Whenever systems become more important than human lives, something essential has been lost. This vision has shaped many of the conversations surrounding his early pontificate. Rather than presenting himself as a distant authority, Pope Leo has consistently spoken about listening before acting. He has encouraged bishops and priests to know the people they serve personally instead of relying only on reports and official meetings. For him, leadership begins with presence. Many Vatican experts believe this approach reflects his years of missionary work. Living among communities with limited resources taught him that faith is experienced through relationships rather than structures alone. Those experiences continue to influence how he speaks about responsibility, mercy, and justice. One of the strongest themes in Pope Leo XIV's public addresses has been transparency. He has emphasized that trust grows when leaders are honest, accountable, and willing to examine themselves. These principles apply not only to governments or businesses, but also to religious institutions. According to his vision, credibility is built through integrity rather than influence. At the same time, Pope Leo has reminded Catholics that reform is never simply about changing policies. Real renewal begins within the human heart. A church may improve its structures, but without humility and charity, those changes will never achieve their purpose. Personal conversion always comes before institutional transformation. History shows that every period of reform within the Catholic Church has faced challenges. New ideas often meet resistance, not because people reject faith, but because change can be uncomfortable. Pope Leo appears fully aware of this reality. His speeches rarely focus on conflict. Instead, they consistently invite dialogue, patience, and cooperation. Another characteristic of his leadership is simplicity. Rather than relying on dramatic language, he often communicates through calm and carefully chosen words. This style has earned respect from many observers who see him as a leader more interested in substance than headlines. His message has also resonated beyond Catholic communities. Many people who follow global affairs view his emphasis on peace, human dignity, and care for vulnerable populations as relevant in a world marked by conflict, displacement, and economic uncertainty. Whether speaking about families, migrants, or communities affected by war, Pope Leo repeatedly returns to the belief that every person deserves compassion and respect. Perhaps the greatest challenge facing any religious leader today is maintaining hope during difficult times. Pope Leo XIV has frequently encouraged believers not to become discouraged by crises or division. Instead, he reminds them that faith calls people to become instruments of reconciliation wherever they live. His vision suggests that genuine authority is measured not by the number of people who obey, but by the number of lives that are strengthened through service. Titles may command respect, but only compassion earns lasting trust. As the first year of his pontificate continues to unfold, Catholics around the world are watching closely. Every decision, every pastoral visit, and every public message offers another glimpse into the direction he hopes to lead the Church. While historians will ultimately judge the long-term impact of his papacy, one thing is already becoming clear. Pope Leo XIV wants a church that is present where people suffer, courageous enough to examine itself honestly, and faithful enough to place mercy before prestige. But this raises an even more important question. If leadership is truly about service, what happens when old habits and established systems stand in the way of that mission? That question has become one of the defining themes surrounding Pope Leo XIV's early leadership, and in the next part, we will explore how his vision of renewal could reshape the future of the Vatican, and why millions continue to follow every step of his historic pontificate. The future of the Catholic Church will not be determined by headlines alone. It will be shaped by thousands of decisions made quietly every day in parishes, schools, hospitals, and communities around the world. Pope Leo XIV has repeatedly suggested that lasting change does not begin in conference rooms. It begins wherever people choose compassion over convenience and service over personal recognition. One of the defining characteristics of his leadership is the belief that bishops and priests should remain close to the people they serve. Throughout his ministry, he has emphasized the importance of listening before speaking and understanding local realities before making major decisions. In a church that stretches across every continent and culture, this approach reflects a desire for unity without ignoring the unique challenges faced by different communities. Another important theme is accountability. Pope Leo XIV has spoken about the responsibility of church leaders to act with honesty, transparency, and integrity. Trust cannot simply be requested. It must be earned through consistent actions. This principle has become increasingly important in an era where people expect institutions to demonstrate both moral leadership and practical responsibility. His leadership also highlights the relationship between faith and mercy. Rules and traditions remain important, but they should always serve the greater purpose of bringing people closer to God. When procedures become more important than people, the Church risks losing sight of its central mission. This balance between truth and compassion appears repeatedly throughout Pope Leo's public messages. Observers have also noticed his careful attention to the global challenges affecting humanity. Armed conflicts, forced migration, economic hardship, environmental concerns, and social division have all appeared in his reflections. Rather than offering political solutions, he consistently encourages dialogue, peace, and respect for human dignity. His message reminds believers that faith should inspire practical acts of love in everyday life. Perhaps one of the most remarkable aspects of Pope Leo XIV's pontificate is his communication style. He rarely relies on dramatic statements. Instead, he speaks with calm conviction, allowing his words to invite reflection rather than controversy. This measured approach has earned respect from many people, including those outside the Catholic Church. Many historians point out that every pope leaves a unique legacy. Some are remembered for major councils, others for diplomatic achievements, missionary work, or theological writings. It is still too early to know how history will ultimately remember Pope Leo XIV. However, his early months have already revealed a clear direction centered on humility, service, and spiritual renewal. The modern world often measures success through wealth, influence, and public recognition. Pope Leo presents a different standard. According to his vision, genuine greatness is found in caring for those who cannot repay kindness, standing beside those who suffer, and protecting the dignity of every human life. This perspective echoes one of the oldest traditions within Christianity, that leadership is ultimately an act of service. His emphasis on hope has also become increasingly important. Many communities continue to face uncertainty caused by conflict, loneliness, and economic pressure. Pope Leo reminds believers that hope is not passive optimism. It is an active decision to continue serving others even during difficult circumstances. In his view, faith becomes visible when compassion remains stronger than fear. This vision naturally places families at the center of society. Strong families create strong communities, and strong communities strengthen the Church itself. Throughout his public addresses, Pope Leo has encouraged parents, young people, educators, and local leaders to work together in building cultures rooted in respect, forgiveness, and mutual responsibility. At the same time, he has challenged every believer to examine personal priorities. It is easy to discuss justice, mercy, and charity in theory. Living those values requires sacrifice, patience, and humility. According to Pope Leo, authentic Christian life begins when people move beyond words and choose concrete acts of love. This message has resonated across many parts of the world because it speaks to universal human experiences. Every society faces division. Every community encounters suffering. Every generation searches for hope. Pope Leo XIV's vision suggests that lasting renewal begins not through power alone, but through transformed hearts willing to serve others. As his pontificate continues, millions will watch his future journeys, speeches, and pastoral initiatives. Historians will study his decisions, theologians will examine his teachings, and believers will reflect on his example. Yet perhaps the most important measure of his leadership will not be found in official documents. It will be found in the lives inspired to practice greater compassion because of his witness. History reminds us that institutions become stronger when they remain faithful to their deepest purpose. Pope Leo XIV appears determined to keep that purpose clearly in view. His message is not about prestige or personal recognition. It is about building a church that welcomes the forgotten, supports the vulnerable, and never loses sight of the people it exists to serve. Whether future generations remember this period as a major turning point remains to be seen, but one reality is already evident. Pope Leo XIV has invited Catholics, and indeed all people of goodwill, to reflect on a simple but challenging question. If leadership is measured by service, how can each of us bring more compassion into the lives of those around us? That question may become the defining legacy of his pontificate. It reminds us that true leadership is not demonstrated by the position we hold, but by the lives we touch. And perhaps that is the message the world needs now more than ever. If you enjoyed this documentary and would like to follow more fact-based stories about Pope Leo XIV, the Vatican, Catholic history, and global church events, consider subscribing to the channel. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you believe is the greatest challenge facing the church today, and how should its leaders